Good evening, everyone, and welcome to In Conversation with Cyhanko, the Journey to Charter Manager of the Year, hosted by the North East Yorkshire and Humberside Regional Board. My name is Ellen McCormack, and I'm an events coordinator at CMI, and I'll shortly be handing over to Carl Andrew, who will begin today's event. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the live chat box on the right of your screen, and we shall answer as many as we can during the Q&A. This session is being recorded and it'll be shared with those who registered to attend, and it'll also be on the CMI website. Now over to Carl Andrew, Deputy Chair of North East Yorkshire and Humberside Board, to begin today's event.
Hi, thank you. Good evening and welcome to this special event. Hello, I am Carl Andrew. I am the Deputy Chair and Finance Lead of the CMI North East Yorkshire and Humber Regional Board. You may be aware that this year the CMI celebrates its 75th anniversary, and 2022 is also marks the 20 years since the Institute first introduced the Charter Manager Award. So I'm delighted this evening to be joined by Simon, who is the current Charter Manager of the Year, winning the award in 2021. Over the next hour, Simon will talk about his personal career journey, his views on leadership and management, and the importance of becoming a chartered manager. Simon will share his insight into how winning the Charter Manager of the Year has influenced his personal development. Simon, congratulations again on your win last year, and a very warm welcome, and thank you for taking time out to chat to me.
Hi, Carl. Thanks. Just realised we need to sort that profile picture out that we used in the flyer at the front. I think it's about 5 years old, but hey ho, no, great to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. So let's begin. And where better to begin, Simon, than actually just telling us a little bit about yourself and the events leading up to your Charter Manager of the Year nomination.
Yeah, so I'm a third generation Ukrainian, so it's been a bit kind of interesting time and difficult time for us over the last 6 or 7 weeks. Originally, grandparents settled in Northern England. I was born in Keighley, town in West Yorkshire. 1979 seems a long time ago now. 18 years later, I was the first person in our family to go to university. So I went to Lancaster University. I had a great 4 years there. Must admit, fiercely competitive from an academic perspective. I think that was something that kind of really came out with me at school. Not naturally, I think the most gifted, but really tried hard. Always wanting to learn, always wanting to improve. So did well at university, and then it was all about kind of trying to get a job and applying for lots and lots of graduate schemes. I think I did keep a tally at one point, and I'm sure I applied for about 23 different graduate schemes. But I was quite hooked on trying to get a job with a water company, a water and sewerage company. And my first interview was with Yorkshire Water. Didn't do very well, got kicked out at the first stage of the process. Severn Trent Water, got to the second stage, got the feedback, learned, improved. Third time lucky, Northumbrian Water offered me an opportunity, and I've been there since. So in that time, I think I've done about 7 or 8 different jobs after a period on a graduate scheme. And I think it's all just led to me becoming more competent, taking on more responsibility, becoming more accomplished. And then a couple of years ago, I flirted with the idea of applying for the Chartered Manager of the Year award. Didn't think I was quite there, but I did have a go last year, and I'm here now. So things worked out in the end.
Cool. So how did you find the process of applying for the Charter Manager of the Year award? And selfishly, I asked that question because I'm seriously considering doing the same myself this year.
Process-wise, I found the process to be quite straightforward because essentially there's some guidance that's there with the with the entry criteria. You know, so you had an idea what sort of things you needed to hit, what you needed to demonstrate to be, I think, seen as a credible candidate. There's hints and tips. And the other good thing is the award was released with quite a bit of notice. You had time to plan, you had time to pull together a good application. So I think the main challenge for me was just about making the time and the space to really reflect, look back, think about my award, my submission. And as ever with these things, continuously refining it, making it better. And I were delighted when they actually extended the deadline because it gave me another 3 or 4 weeks just to build again on my first and second drafts and do a better job. But I wouldn't underestimate the time, Carl, because I think with any of these things, you're pitching yourself against some really good competition.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's well worth investing the time and effort for people who want to take it seriously and have a good go.
Absolutely, and I think something that you very pertinent that you picked up there is that reflection piece. I know when I applied to become a charter manager, I think that was one of my biggest takeaways that the process taught me, that reflection piece, the ability to stop, look, and reflect on my progress as a manager, which then gave me confidence to actually complete the charter manager's process. So I think that's a really, really pertinent and valuable lesson. That reflection piece. So you briefly touched on your interest in water. Where did that come from? Just out of interest.
It's funny how you looked back to being thinking you're a kid at school or even at university, and there's certain people and there's certain experiences that resonate with you. When I was at Lancaster University, my degree was half physical geography, half environmental science. It was an environmental management degree. And we had a lecturer a guy called Nick Chappell, who's an environmental scientist, a hydrologist, really. And we did quite a few modules which were based on the almost the science of getting water from the clouds, treatment through the distribution network to customers, and then the whole process of getting it back from customers, treating it and returning it to the environment. And it was either his delivery or it was, I'm sure it was partly content, but I'm also sure I think I were pretty inspired with the way he delivered it and the way he was able to deliver it. I just thought this whole subject, I just found it really interesting, fascinating. He flipped a light bulb with me, just to go, you need to find out more, learn about this. And as part of some of that learning, we had a few visits to water treatment works. And I remember at the time, bear in mind, fresh-faced 18, 19-year-old going on this field trip. There was a guy coming towards the end of his career. I think he'd retired actually from United Utilities. And he was showing us around the treatment works, around the catchments. And I just thought, this guy's got the best job ever. Didn't actually dawn on me he'd retired and he probably won't get him paid for it. But I think you put them things together and you go, I just found the subject and the topic fascinating. I thought, I want to find out more. Hence, it was something as loose as that. And that's why I applied to a lot of water and sewerage companies.
Yeah. It's interesting. Once you find your passion, I think, being able to find the right employee for yourself becomes an easier process, doesn't it? In terms of, aligning your interests and their interests, because it's so important to be happy in your work and to find that right employer that will eventually support you, in all that you want to do and to develop. So Sam, just moving on. So what lessons have you learned that you can share with people who are still in their very early stages of their leadership journey?
Yeah, I did an event with the Institute of Water, an organisation I've been quite heavily involved in. I've got a group of people called the Rising Stars. Right. Some, guys quite early in their careers, really, as leaders, and we got asked a similar question. And I think I'd pick out 3 things. I think the first thing, as any relatively new leader, there's a lot of insecurities. there's anxieties, there's sleepless nights. So for example, lying in bed thinking, I've got to have a courageous conversation tomorrow morning with somebody, and he or she might be 15, 20, 25 years older. I'm scared, I'm worried, but actually I've got principles and I need to do this. So I think the first thing I'd say is, you make mistakes. So there's mistakes, there's errors, there's anxieties. But actually, if I were looking back at myself now, I'd be saying, Simon, that's normal and it's okay. That's natural. That's just you pushing your comfort zone, growing. And you're almost building those foundations for the future. Because now those sorts of things wouldn't worry me like they would have done 20, 21 years ago. So I think the first thing I'd say is, those insecurities, those concerns, they're okay. They're just part of you growing. The second thing I think I'd be saying to people relatively early in their careers is, try in the role, if you're taking on a new role, try and focus on making a measurable and sustained difference in the role that you're taking before starting to look at what's next. And the reason I say that, and I've tried to work to that principle myself, is if you can do that and you can achieve something credible or some things credible in each of the jobs that you do, it builds confidence. You build confidence in yourself. You build credibility amongst the people you work with and you work across, and it helps prepare you for what's going to come next, be that a sideways move, be it a move in a completely different direction. And that's why I've typically, between 3 and 4 years at every role I've taken, because I think you need that time to understand the basics, start making a difference, and making sure some of them changes and improvements are sustained. And then you've got that confidence and credibility to think about what could be next. So I think that was the second thing. The first thing I'd really encourage people to do is just max out personal development opportunities. Be a member of the Chartered Management Institute. If you get asked by your boss to go and speak at an event, even though it might keep you up at night with terror, thinking about preparation, do it. Apply for grants to do a course. Apply for grants or some funding to get some personal coaching. Try and get a mentor. Read a journal. Flick through a journal. Because even though you don't realize it at a time, all those things improve your knowledge, they improve your awareness. And over a period of time, you start responding to some of that thing you've either consciously or unconsciously. It just helps you be better, more rounded, and gradually more effective. So I think those would be the three things, Carl.
Excellent. No, I absolutely agree. I think there's a saying I often use: success leaves clues. And when you're building self-confidence in those early years, to look back, as you rightly point out, to have some sustained successes and some sustained changes that you can look back and say, I developed that, I did that. That gives you so much confidence and so much self-belief to be able then to move forward with your career. And absolutely, I mean, even myself, I would encourage anybody to develop their ability to speak. In fact, I've just joined Toastmasters UK because I want to develop my own ability to stand up in front of audiences and to speak. So you're never too old to grow. There's lots of webinars and lots of books that you can read. But yeah, absolutely, I would echo that really sound advice. So in terms of your career development, Simon, which relationships have had the biggest impact on you and your approach to leadership?
I think I was thinking a little bit about this. I just think there's almost so many, it becomes really difficult to single people out. But I have done it. Because I think at different points in your career, Carl, you're looking at different people for different things. Yeah. So if you think about your first job, perhaps as a leader, you're probably more needy and demanding of what you might be of your manager, just for some kind of basic and simple things. And now 20 years down the line, I look at different people for different things. So I think a couple of people I would pick out. We've got 2 directors at our company now who've been there since the beginning of my career. They weren't directors at the time; they were in middle stroke senior manager roles. But one's called Claire, the other's called Richard, and both have, over a period of time, they've made time for me, they've listened to me, they've let me run ideas and thinking past them, they've guided me, they've questioned me, they've challenged me. But over that period, over a period of time, it's just gradually helped me become better. And it's almost been a bit like being in a family and having an uncle or an auntie who are there at different points in time, who you could just say, people you trust, and who can give you that little bit of a push and bit of a lift at the right time. 3 years ago, I was at risk of redundancy because we're having a bit of a restructure at work, and I applied for 2 jobs that were more senior than the job that was basically being taken out of the organizational structure. And it was those 2 who were directors at the time, Richard and Claire, who basically offered me the job I've got now, and basically said, we really believe in you. We've seen how you've grown. We've seen how you've developed. You're the right guy to do this job. And you don't forget moments like that. And I'm sure somewhere the fact that they'll have played a part and they've seen me learn, grow, develop, listen, improve, reflect, and improve. It'll have been somewhere in their minds, I'm sure, when it came to the outcomes of that process and picking the right person. I think the other thing about relationships, it's quite easy, Carl, to pick on people probably more senior who've helped you, guided you, given you a lift. I'll probably pick on a couple of people where it's gone badly, who've played a part in helping me where I've got to. Early days in my career, first couple of line management jobs, made some terrible mistakes, terrible decisions, not because I was a bad person or not because I wanted to do bad things and upset people, but made decisions, bit naive, inexperienced, life experience. And I'll give you an example. There was a lady at one point in time, she'd lost her parents over a short period of time, and she needed more time. She needed time outside of work to do what she needed to do, and sort out her personal affairs. And I remember at the time words to the effect of, "You've not got any more annual leave. How can you take time out to help and do what your parent, do what you need to do with your family?" That was that was the last thing that lady wanted to hear at that point in time. But that was me being naive, black and white. The handbook says X, but you learn from that. I've never made them sorts of mistakes ever again. That's almost building the foundation through a bit of pain and serious cock up, really. But I've never made them mistakes again. And you learn, you grow, you develop, improve. So there's almost a bit of good and bad in there. You can learn from the good relationships, and you learn from probably the people you've upset, and it's where it's not gone very well.
No, thank you for your honesty. No, I can echo exactly the same. There's a saying, isn't there, that there are people for come along in life for reasons and seasons, and I think also if you are an individual that has that growth mindset, people see that. And there's a saying, isn't there, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. So your 2 directors obviously saw that in you and were prepared to support you and support your development. But you're right. It's about having an honest conversation with yourself, isn't it? To say in those decisions and having that period of reflection to say, that wasn't, in hindsight, that wasn't a great decision I've just taken, and note to self, I will do better next time. And as you said in your introduction, it is all about learning, and You will make mistakes, and you have to be comfortable. I think it's being that I think you've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes. You know, just pushing yourself.
And Carl, just talking openly with you, I think it's a skill or an ability that a lot of people lack. I think a lot of senior leaders lack that, and it can do so much from a trust perspective. If somebody does go, you have that conversation, they go, "Do you know something, Simon?" Or vice versa. "Do you know something? I got it wrong. I got it wrong. I've thought about it, and next time, should that situation arise, I'll try A, B, and C." It does so much, in my opinion, for the relationship you've got with someone, just to go, "Do you know something?" Dead honest, trust, just so much from a trust perspective. And I think there's still, personally, I see a lot where you don't always get that. There'll be other reasons why things haven't worked out as they should, rather than looking at themselves going, "I could have done a little bit more, I could have done something a bit different, I didn't deal with X and Y properly." So, another tip, in my opinion, out there, and actually this is a bit of the CMI exercise, the award. There was things in my submission where actually we didn't get everything right. Part of that was my doing, but people have got to be bigger and better at going, actually, I could do something different here. And it does so much from a relationship and trust perspective.
I couldn't agree more. No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that sort of segues into a nice question about, do you have any tips for anyone listening on how to identify and approach a potential mentor or sponsor?
Yeah, I think at different times in your career, people look and want and need different things. So I think the starting point is for somebody just to think about what are the real skills or what are the real experiences somebody thinks they need more of around them. Who do you look at as being particularly good or strong or wise, even wise, in different ways, and who do you respect? Who do other people respect? So at a starting point, someone could go, well, Simon, well, Carl, what do you mean by that? But who are the big hitters? Who are some of the big hitters in your organization or your network who got really good reputations? Who you might see in some of the corporate communications? Who are some of those people out there who might get a lot of kudos, win some awards? But equally, who do you think you would enjoy spending a bit of time with and talking to? Because it's no good approaching somebody you think, I just don't like them. I don't think I could talk to them. I don't think I could sit down and have a coffee with them. So I think there's something there as well about, do you think you could have a sit down, pleasant, would you enjoy a bit of the company? I think that's got to be a thing in there, because you've got to be comfortable enough to open up to somebody who might act in a sponsorship or mentoring role. When it comes to an approach, I've seen different things over the years, but don't be the person who emails and goes, I'm wanting a mentor. Don't do that. Make an effort, and make a serious effort. If you're asking somebody to potentially mentor you or sponsor you, whatever word, or even if it were coaching around a particular skill set or knowledge you're lacking, make an effort. Show them you're serious. Show them you're serious about learning, development, and growth. Offer to buy them a coffee, meet them, buy them a coffee, sit down, talk in person, and try and explain how you think how they might just be able to help shape, guide, and support you. I had an experience, it's similar, but the points there, going back to the redundancy thing 3 years ago. And the point here is you'll be surprised with what reaction you get. Because I think if you go about it right way, people typically say, I'm flattered you've asked me. Of course I'll help you. About 3 years ago, I got in touch with a guy called Peter Simpson, who's a chief executive at Anglian Water. So probably box office as far as the UK water industry is concerned. And I'd met him a number of times, and I got in touch and basically said, words to the effect of, I'm going through redundancy, I met a few times, I'm hoping you or somebody from your team would be able to share some thoughts, guidance on this job I'm applying for. And that contact originally was meant for someone in his team, because I'm thinking I'm going to waste the time of the CEO. He got back in touch with me and he said, actually, Simon, I will do this for you.
Wow.
So him, Peter, being box office, probably one of the best, most effective people in the industry, probably broader business in this country, he took a couple of hours of his time to, I guess, coach me, support me, and arguably played a part in helping me make sure I did brilliantly as part of the recruitment process and I got the job. So I think the point is, don't be shy. If you've got your eye on something or somebody who you think can help and you're serious and you've got credibility, go for it, because you'll get a good positive response. And in some cases, they'll blow you away with the help and the support, just like Peter did with me a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I know from my own personal experience, don't be afraid either to have reverse mentoring. So I've undertaken some reverse mentoring where I've got somebody younger mentoring me, which is wonderful, because you get a completely different point of view, and it just freshens the whole process up. But no, very wise words, and I must admit, I do echo that direct. Yeah, don't mail it in. Do it personally and take that time to do it on a personal basis, because you're right, it will definitely pay dividends. So through the process of going through potential redundancy and your development at Northumbria, what have you learned about yourself and your own leadership style?
It's one of the really simple things I learned about myself. Again, it was going back to pulling that application together and reflecting. And again, it might seem a little bit cheesy, but one of the things I did realize is the same things motivate me now at work, age 43, as they did as a 13 and 14-year-old lad at school. And that at school, it was always about, for me, and everybody's different, but it was about achieving good results and being recognized for achieving good results. And my career and my motivations, what makes me do well in work, again, is the opportunity to achieve really good results and being recognized as the person who's achieved really good results. And I remember having that conversation with my boss, actually, when in and around the time I made that award, along the lines of, hey, Richard, if you want to be getting the best out of me, it's about results and it's about recognition. But that's important, because if you know what motivates you and your boss knows what motivates you, you've got a recipe for fire, really, and lift off, because that way you can get the best out of people. So I think there's something there about, and it's funny, isn't it? Kind of, I guess 30 years after being in the maths class and, results recognition, 30 years on, you look back and go, actually, yeah, that is what motivates me. And it's always been there. So there's something there about what I've learned about myself, partly through the process. The second thing about leadership style, again, it was part of the submission, but it's also, I think, I guess you realize what your super strengths are. What are the things you're really good at? What are your things you're really effective at? And over the last, I mentioned probably, I've said seven jobs for 2 to 3 years ish since joining Northumbrian Water. And the main successes in recent years have always been about bringing together teams of people from operations typically, but with other support services, to achieve outstanding results. And that's typically with me playing a big part in that, about persistence to achieve any good results. I found you need to be extremely persistent. And I think that's one of my super strengths. It's okay having the right people together, But if people wander off, start doing different things, and it all becomes a bit fragmented, and you don't have that persistence, you don't keep people together, you don't keep that drumbeat, you don't keep that focus, you don't keep celebrating success, you lose it and you achieve very little. So I think part of this process has been about me reflecting on that and just realizing what my super strengths are. And again, it's great to know that, because it's front of mind.
Indeed, no, that's very, very important to recognise those super strengths. And I think sometimes you have to go to the edge of your comfort zone sometimes to find that. I know in my own personal journey, I've had to sort of push myself to the edges of my comfort zone to discover what my super strengths are. And it's only until you do that you then realise what they are. But I mean, how do you find managing teams and keeping their focus? Is that a difficult scenario for you to manage, or do you recruit the right members of the team members that will remain focused? Because I know I've worked in teams, and particularly coming from a finance background, finance is the last thing that turns a lot of people on and makes them motivated. And I've always found it sometimes very difficult in my own personal journey to keep individuals focused where it should be on a project to keep them through. I mean, is there any sort of known strategies that you employ?
I think the honest answer is there's probably little bits of everything you've just said, Carl. But one of the things I've learned is, as a leader, as any leader, if you're talking about something and you're giving off those messages about something being particularly important every day of every week of every month, people who work with you, look up to you, you're talking, we start realizing, going, this really is important, and he's not going to stop bleating on about it. and so this is where this persistence thing comes in, Carl, because I think if you do enough of that, and then you've got managers and team leaders and other influential people in your team who are also doing the same, you start getting people. I think you increasingly get people to work and behave and do some of the actions in line with what you're trying to do to make things better. So I think there's something about that drumbeat, that persistence, that consistency of message, that ultimately you'll turn the tanker. You'll turn the tanker in the right direction, because you've got everybody lined up behind the message. But it'll take time. And obviously, it's probably easy to do with smaller teams than bigger teams, because in theory, you've got less people to try and influence and mold and turn around. But I think that'd be the one message for me: drumbeat, persistence, and keep being consistent with your message.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also you've just mentioned something there that has just piqued my interest: is time. And again, coming from a finance background, there's always this pressure to turn things around quickly and see the result. And often that's not possible. And certainly it's not right to do that. But you have to build the foundations. And then, eventually, as you say, with that persistence, that drumbeat, you will start to deliver those results. As you said earlier in the interview, sustainable results that last, rather than results that are, you deliver the timetable, but actually the results are only fleeting. You haven't built the foundations properly.
And Carl, that's one of the reasons I made that point earlier about people considering when to go for the next job. Yeah. I just think I think it's quite easy for a number of people to come into a role, short duration, start getting signals which suggesting things are better. And then actually, within 12 or 18 months, that individual's gone. And you're probably in a bigger mess than you might have been when you started. that can't be good. It's not good for the team. And I personally, how can it be good for the leader? They've not made a significant improvement or change with doing that. So I just think there's something about, if you're taking on a new role, have that bit of persistence, have that bit of staying power. Because if you're serious, that'll be good for your confidence, because it shows you can do something different, you can achieve, you can sustain results. And then when other people are thinking about you, is Simon, is Carl any good? Well, actually, this guy stuck something out. He made a significant change. And when he moved on, or he or she moved on, the results are as good as they were when they left. There's a lot to be said for that. And I think it's just that credibility thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Wise words. Another question now. So Simon, how do you navigate stakeholder management and influence upwards? And what are the key skills to have an impact at a higher level within the organization and within the wider business community?
Yeah, you thought you'd make the questions gradually tougher, didn't you? Seeing what you've done here. I was thinking about a little bit about this, because you did give us a tip off about this question. And you mentioned finance. Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit of an example, because I think it brings it to life a little bit. We're under some, and as a lot of businesses are under pretty significant financial pressures at the minute, so increasingly we're looking at the benefit cost ratio of business cases, what delivers really good value for money. And actually, you're probably only going to get a business case approved if it's super sharp.
Yep.
And we've got a new finance director at our place, a guy called Mike from the Northwest, and he's sharp when it comes to money. He's sharp. So one of the tips here, I think, if you're thinking about influencing upwards, is who's upwards, but who are the influential, who are the really influential stakeholders. So I know at our place, the finance director, because of a lot of the pressures we've got in the business, is an influential stakeholder. And actually, if we want Mike on side, we're probably going to have to put an extra bit of groundwork in with Mike. So in a number of cases recently, when we've gone for things like extra headcount, extra budget to do things, we've invested quite a bit of time up front with Mike to take him through what we want to do, why we want to do it, what the benefit cost ratio is, and actually giving him a bit of a chance to digest it, make some suggestions, because actually he's sharp. He's identified a few things when we've done that with him, which we've reflected on and changed and improved. So what that basically means in the case of Mike is he's supportive before we go to the top table in our business and say, this is what we want to do and this is the reason we want to do it. Had we not have done that, invested that time in Mike, the likelihood is we'd have gone to try and influence the leadership team at our company, get a business case approved, and actually it'd have probably been kicked out because Mike wasn't happy. Hence, so what we've tried, I guess you're trying to pick certain people off in advance of asking for and making big decisions to try and make sure the supporters, the allies, they've had a chance to have an input, the stakeholders, they've got a bit of skin in the game. So we've done it as well with Heidi Motram's our chief exec on certain things in our, my submission for Chartered Manager of the Year was about sewer flooding improvements. We spent quite a bit of time with Heidi before we went to the big business as such and said, these are the things we want to do and this is why we want to do it. And obviously having Heidi's support before we approached all the directors made things a little bit easier. So things about looking upwards, understanding who's really influential and trying to do a bit of groundwork with them. So you help them understand, but equally they help you and the more likely to support.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, from my own personal experience, closing a power station where you don't actually know the costs, and you've been given a budget, and you're going to exceed that budget, and you're getting that pressure. And you're right, spending time with the influential decision makers pays dividends. And it goes back to something you said earlier, actually, and having those honest conversations when you are just about to breach a budget, as we were, and saying, look, it's X, Y, Z. We didn't see this coming. It's a 50-year-old power station. There are issues that nobody knew about, and it's having that confidence and that ability and that skill and that honesty to have those conversations. But absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. Influencing upwards is so important, and also keeping that conversation going. It's not just a one-off conversation about a particular project. Having those open communication channels, and again, as you said earlier, that established trust. So those next time you go, or next time you're seeking an investment or a go ahead for a project, you've already got that trust built, which is so important. And have you ever had to sort of manage stakeholders beyond the boundaries of the business? So going out into the community, is that something that you've faced, Simon?
Yeah, not massively, I must admit, because I think in my role, predominantly in operations within the business, it's typically been more inwardly facing, working with different parts of the business to try and achieve some of the results we've needed to achieve. But saying that, Carl, the Environment Agency are a key external partner with what we do at the moment. Because I'm in the wastewater part of the business. Previously, in the water side of the business, it was the Drinking Water Inspectorate. These are both our regulators. So there's always a part to play with these guys to demonstrate, we're always trying to do the right things for the right reasons, be it to protect drinking water quality for customers, or protect the environment with some of the policies and procedures we use. So it has been a part of the role, but it's certainly never been the biggest. So, over a period of time, thinking about my career development, that might be one of the directions I need to think more and more about.
Cool. Well, that comes to the end of my questions, but we have two pre-submitted questions. And apologies, I'm just going to try and pronounce a name here. So it's Kihinda is the first question. And they asked, how would you rise to becoming a manager with zero-based knowledge?
Yeah, Kahinda's come up with tougher questions than you, Carl. I think in reality, if you think about things, everybody, you could argue, everybody who becomes a manager or a leader over time starts with zero-based knowledge. And I think there's something to be said for, if you show the right sorts of behaviors in the workplace, be it you can work with other people, you work hard, you've got a decent work ethic. If you show flexibility, if you show an ability, go back to what we talked about earlier about credibility, about achieving, essentially making sure you do as best as you can in terms of what your boss is expecting you to do, what your company is asking you to do, you're starting to demonstrate the right sorts of strengths, skills, super strengths, perhaps, that you need to be a leader. And at the end of the day, everybody needs a first chance. People always need a first chance to get the foot on the leadership ladder, if you want to call it that. So I think my advice is try and demonstrate the right sorts of behaviors. A lot of those are transferable skills, transferable qualities. And actually, if you can do all those things, quite often, because those are role model behaviors, quite often those are role model behaviors. And leaders, we want people in leadership roles who are good role models. And then I think I'd be advising somebody to be talking upwards, who are the influential people above them, and start talking about, is there an opportunity for me to have a go as a team leader, have a secondment, cover somebody who's on maternity leave? But be persistent, show that you want to learn, show that you want a chance, demonstrate them transferable skills. Somebody's going to give you a break at some point, because good people will always get a break.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree with that. So the next question is from James. What has been the hardest part of your journey?
I think we go right back to the beginning of the story, Carl. So go back to sleepless nights, anxiety, I'm not good enough. The monkey on the shoulder basically saying you cannot challenge person X or Y for doing whatever they're doing. If I always look back, I think the first 3 or 4 years in proper kind of team leadership roles when I was given them were the hardest, because you're completely out. You know nothing. You know nothing. You think you do, but actually you don't, and that's tough. That's tough. It's uncomfortable, but you know, sure enough, you're building exceptional foundation for the future, which will make you and help you, as long as you keep growing, keep developing, keep testing yourself, to build brilliant foundations for the future. So I'd say that probably the first 5 years, but it builds a great foundation for what comes after.
Excellent. No, cool. We haven't received any other questions, but if I can add one final question, or a couple of questions, really, I guess. I guess, what's your sort of main mantra? What's the thing that you uphold the most in terms of leadership? What's the one principle that is so important to you, that if it's crossed, that is, it's a problem for you? What do you hold most dear in terms of the leadership? Sort of one aspect of leadership.
You had to finish with something really difficult that I didn't prepare for, didn't you? There'll be textbooks. There is textbooks on this sort of stuff, Carl, isn't there? And everybody's going to give you some sort of different answer. Some people are got to be authentic, got to be honest, and of all these sorts of things. But I think you've got to stick with, what's in your heart. I think the answer for me is go back again to what's been the key thing that's motivated me, been in my core since I started out with some of this stuff. And it's always been about demonstrating you're making a real difference, a real difference, a quantifiable difference. And that be something you can, be it numbers, or it could be, the point I'm trying to make is you've got to make a difference, and you've got to be able to demonstrate you're making a difference. And there's something there around results, and bringing those people you lead and you work with towards achieving results. And I think if other people look at you doing that, and obviously you've got to behave, ethically. You've got to behave as one team. You've got to involve other people. You've got to try and be creative and all that sort of stuff. And you've got to have standards. But ultimately, for me, as a leader, let's make sure we achieve something. Let's make sure we achieve results. Let's show people I and the people around me are making a proper difference.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. On that note, I'll say we've got no more questions for you. Brilliant time. I thoroughly enjoyed our time together this evening. I've learnt loads, and you've certainly given me a lot to think about and a lot to reflect this evening. But it's been wonderful, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
What a great conversation. Thank you, Carl, for hosting, and Simon for all your insights and expertise. I found that really interesting. So just a couple of points. If you're a member of CMI, you can log into Management Direct, and we've got a link in the live chat. And if you're not a member of the CMI, you can join the community by clicking on the link in the chat. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and goodbye.